Welcome to Deep Dive Podcast.
Okay, let's unpack this. Day 2 of the Diddy trial. It's brought forward some, well, truly unsettling details, hasn't it?
It really has. And we've got this comprehensive courtroom summary, thanks to you, our listener, for sharing it. It paints a stark picture.
Yeah, it definitely moves way beyond typical celebrity gossip.
And I think it's the sheer depth, the precision of the testimony that really stands out here. We're not talking vague accusations.
No, it's a very specific account of alleged events. And, if these things are corroborated, they could carry some serious legal weight.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, the idea is to look past these sort of sensational headlines, right?
Exactly. We want to dissect the most critical, legally significant parts of Cassie Ventura's testimony based on what you've sent us. Really try to understand the issues underneath.
Okay, so given that detailed summary, what are the central allegations that kind of immediately jump out at you?
Well, the immediate impact is just the level of detail. Cassie isn't just, claiming general misconduct. She's giving specifics that are quite disturbing. We're talking about alleged involvement of Diddy's staff in facilitating these freak-offs, as they're called. The direct coordination of payments, travel for male escorts, apparently linked straight to him.
And even things like, what was it? Huge amounts of baby oil. Explicit choreography being mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot.
And what's interesting, legally speaking, is how these details might build a bigger picture.
Yeah.
You mentioned staff involvement. That's often key.
How so? Why is that so significant?
Well, if it was just one person's alleged actions, the legal framework is different.
Yeah.
But when you bring in staff, potentially multiple people, it starts to look more like an organized activity.
Right, and it escalates from there, according to the summary. Claims Diddy provided drugs, specifically ecstasy, ketamine, cocaine mentioned, plus the regular use of pseudonyms like Frank White and lots of cross-state travel. It starts to feel less isolated, less like just a personal relationship gone wrong.
And that's exactly where you start seeing potential links to federal law. The summary mentions ICO and the Mann Act. These are pretty serious.
Okay, so remind us RICO is about.
ICO targets organized criminal behavior, think networks, groups involved in ongoing illegal activities. It's designed to dismantle the whole operation.
And the Mann Act.
That specifically deals with transporting people across state lines for prostitution or, as the law puts it, other immoral purposes.
So when we hear about staff allegedly booking rooms, getting supplies, handling money, all connected to these events, that starts to raise red flags under ICO, like a potential pattern, a coordinated thing.
Precisely. It suggests potentially a coordinated effort, not just random acts. That alleged staff involvement isn't just a shocking detail. It could be crucial for building a case for a criminal enterprise. That's fundamental for ICO.
Wow. Okay. Then you add the sheer weight of the courtroom atmosphere described in the summary.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Cassie reportedly 8 to 9 months pregnant, but composed. Meanwhile, Diddy reacting visibly shaking his head. You can't ignore how that looks, right? Especially to a jury.
Oh, definitely not.
Right.
Jurors are human. They're influenced by what they see. A witness's demeanor, how calm or upset they seem while recounting difficult things, that impacts credibility.
And the accused's reactions, too, presumably.
Absolutely. Visible reactions can shape perceptions, rightly or wrongly. These optics, they're not just fluff. They could subtly influence how a jury weighs the actual evidence.
And the summary mentioned the defense apparently requested Cassie testify before the jury came in.
Right. That suggests they knew. They were aware of the potential impact her presence and testimony could have, just the visual of it all.
It shows a strategic awareness, definitely.
But it's crucial. We have to remember, we've only really heard one side in detail so far.
Good point. The defense hasn't done their cross-examination yet.
Exactly.
So based on the summary, what might they try? Attack her credibility.
That's almost certainly going to be part of it. They might try to reframe interactions as consensual, maybe try to distance Diddy from the organizational stuff.
Or even suggest she was a willing participant. Maybe even an organizer herself.
It's possible they'll explore those angles, but what strikes me is the sheer challenge they seem to be facing, given how detailed this testimony is reported to be.
It sounds like a mountain, not a molehill, for them to climb.
That's a good way to put it. And even if they manage to poke holes in the legal case, there's the whole public opinion aspect.
Right, the summary mentioned the Cosby effect. That feels really relevant here.
It does. Because regardless of the legal verdict, sometimes these kinds of detailed public allegations cause reputational damage. That's, well, profound. And maybe permanent.
It reflects a shift, maybe. in how the public processes these accusations against powerful people, social media amplifying things.
I think so. And drawing parallels to cases like R. Kelly or Jeffrey Epstein is useful. Those became significant not just legally, but for the wider conversations they sparked about power, exploitation, accountability.
And this Diddy case could potentially follow that path, become a landmark.
It certainly has that potential, depending on how it unfolds and what evidence emerges. It could really shape how we view these issues.
Okay, so let's dig a bit deeper into the legal significance again. We talked, Raiko, this idea of a criminal enterprise. How does Cassie's testimony about staff actions specifically support that charge?
Well, for RICO, prosecutors need to show an enterprise, a group working together with a shared illegal aim. So Cassie's testimony, if believed, about staff actively facilitating things, like stocking supplies, preparing rooms for these freak-offs, that directly supports an argument for an organized, repeated pattern of behavior. That's a cornerstone of RICO. If the jury believes Diddy led this and benefited, the racketeering case gets much stronger.
Okay. And the sex trafficking angle, the Mann Act. How does her testimony line up there?
Her account of being allegedly instructed by Diddy to book male escorts, arrange their travel across state lines, and use aliases. That goes right to the heart of the Mann Act.
Because the law is about transporting people across states for illicit sex.
Exactly. Booking travel for escorts, using fake names to hide transactions, those could be seen as deliberate actions to facilitate trafficking under the law.
And the summary also brought up forced labor or coercion. What parts of her testimony point that way?
That's where her testimony about participating while allegedly under the influence of drugs provided by Diddy, the ecstasy, ketamine, cocaine, becomes critical.
Right.
And her description of these encounters as something she felt expected to endure, even when unwilling or unwell, like during her period.
So the argument is lack of genuine consent due to the power dynamic in the alleged drugs.
Precisely. Even if she made some arrangements, if the argument is she felt she had no real choice because of those factors, it undermines consent. It supports the idea of coercion, potentially even forced labor, depending on the specifics.
The summary also pull out some specific details that apparently really shocked the courtroom. Can we touch on those? Why they might be so impactful?
Yeah, those specifics, they create a very concrete and frankly disturbing picture. That often carries weight in court.
Like what?
Well, the reported incidents of Diddy allegedly urinating on her, directing others to do it. The descriptions of baby oil in kiddie pools, choreographed sex acts.
Okay, yeah.
Claims of sessions lasting 3-4 days involving staffers. The mention of existing video footage, names of hired escorts, even the routine use of fake names like Frank White.
These aren't vague claims at all.
No. These kinds of graphic, specific details could leave a very powerful, lasting impression on a jury, much more than general accusations might.
And the reported reactions, jurors showing disgust, Diddy's family there, Misa Hilton leaving, that underscores the gravity.
It really does. Those immediate visceral responses in the room highlight the emotional punch of her account. It suggests how challenging this testimony might be for the defense to counter.
Which brings us back to why the summary suggests the defense has such a struggle ahead. Trying to discredit a witness who is, by reports, calm, pregnant, and giving this level of detail, maybe with receipts to back it up.
It's incredibly difficult. The optics alone, as we said, are challenging. Going hard after someone in Cassie's position, recounting these things with apparent composure, risks alienating the jury even more.
So, putting it all together, it feels like this trial is about way more than just a legal fight for Diddy.
I think that's right. The sheer volume, the reported consistency, the nature of Cassie's testimony, plus the systemic parts she described, staff, money, travel, aliases, it feels like it could be a real turning point.
He's fighting for more than just legal freedom, then.
It seems that way. He's fighting, potentially, to avoid becoming this cultural symbol associated with these kinds of alleged behaviors.
So looking ahead, the cross-examination of Cassie is obviously the next huge step. What kind of strategies do you think the defense might use there?
It's a real tightrope walk for them. They have to challenge her credibility somehow, but without seeming overly aggressive or, frankly, cruel, which could backfire badly with the jury.
So what areas might they probe?
Well, probably the timeline of the relationship. They might argue she stayed willingly, benefited from it financially or professionally. They'll look for any inconsistencies, however small, in her different accounts or statements.
What about motive?
Oh, definitely. They'll likely explore potential motives, money, revenge, maybe fame. The prior civil settlement will almost certainly come up.
And her admitted drug use, is that something they bring up?
They might, but it's risky. Very risky. It can easily look like victim blaming, suggesting she was unreliable or somehow responsible because of it. That often doesn't play well with juries.
Okay, so beyond directly questioning Cassie, what's the likely broader defense playbook, the core strategies?
You'd expect, first, denial of direct criminal involvement by Diddy himself. Then, trying to distance him from the logistics, maybe painting staff actions as independent, or saying he wasn't aware of the details.
And undermining her testimony generally.
Yeah, trying to portray her as exaggerating, perhaps mentally unstable or inconsistent. For RICO, they'll fight hard against the idea of a coordinated enterprise. They'll argue these are isolated incidents, maybe bad behavior, but not an organized criminal operation.
And for the trafficking charges?
They'll likely hammer on the force, fraud, or coercion element. Argue there was none, that it was consensual, or maybe even that Cassie acted independently in booking any escorts, if that happened.
But the summary also pointed out some big risks or hurdles for the defense.
Absolutely. There are those ongoing federal investigations in multiple places that hangs over everything. The potential for evidence like videos or financial records to back up Cassie's story is a huge threat to them.
And the possibility of others coming forward.
Yes, more alleged victims or witnesses could emerge, especially with the high-profile nature of this. And as we keep saying, the jury might already feel a fair bit of sympathy for Cassie, just based on her testimony so far.
So when you weigh all that, what are the possible outcomes? Where could this realistically end up?
Well, one outcome is conviction, obviously, on some or all charges. If the jury buys the prosecution's case that he controlled an organized group for illegal purposes, was involved in interstate trafficking, used coercion, or drugs, then, yeah, significant prison time is possible. RICO and trafficking charges carry heavy sentences.
What about a plea deal?
That's another possibility. If the evidence piles up or more damaging testimony seems likely, a plea deal might look attractive to limit the damage, maybe get a reduced sentence, protect some assets.
An acquittal or a hung jury?
Also possible. The burden proof is high. If the defense manages to create enough reasonable doubt in the jurors' minds, they could get a hung jury, or even an acquittal on some or all charges.
But like you said earlier, even a legal win might not be a real win.
Exactly. That's the point the summary made, and it's a strong one. Look at Harvey Weinstein initially, or others. Even if he's acquitted, the damage to his brand, his public image, it seems almost irreversible at this point.
Business deals falling apart, future lawsuits likely.
Right. Reports suggest partnerships are already crumbling. More lawsuits, civil or even criminal, could follow. Public perceptions seems to have shifted dramatically already, regardless of what the jury decides.
Okay, so bringing this deep dive towards a close. The summary you shared paints this picture of incredibly detailed, disturbing allegations from Cassie Ventura, allegations carrying potentially huge legal weight under laws like RICO, the Mann Act. The defense seems to face a massive uphill battle countering it.
It certainly looks that way from this testimony.
And no matter the verdict, the impact on public perception, on Diddy's whole legacy, seems likely to be profound and probably negative.
It really does. And maybe a final thought for you, listening to all this. Think beyond just the celebrity news aspect.
Yeah.
Consider what this testimony, if it's proven true, reveals about power dynamics, maybe in entertainment, maybe more broadly. What does it suggest about the potential for exploitation when there are huge imbalances of power? And what are the long-term consequences for everyone involved, the accuser, the accused, the bystanders, regardless of what a court decides?
That's a heavy thought. It forces you to think about the human cost behind the headlines.
Exactly. It's complex, and the stakes are incredibly high for everyone.